the stupiding of the American mind. I don't even know if I know if stupiding is even a word.
Take notes, scriptures on the table open wide, Bible on the desk.
Welcome back to Taking Notes. If you are new here, my name is Dr. Ellison. You can call me Dr. E. I have been excitedly waiting to get back to you, and I am so glad to be here. And it is my prayer that you are doing well. Today, we are going to talk about something very important that is necessary: the power of words, informed voices, and the issue of stupid. I have been so excited to get back to you. I have picked up a couple of books and read an article that I have been just anxiously waiting to share with you. And as we talk about the power of words and informed voices, it was just brought to mind that last year's word of the year was brain rot. And then this year, the word of the year, coincidentally, is rage bait. And that just lets me know that there is an ongoing war for our minds. And I read a very interesting article that questions whether or not, as a society, we are growing stupid. And of course, I am not calling anybody, I am not calling myself stupid. And when we say stupid, we only merely mean slow of mind. And one of those books that I picked up, I am going to unbox with you, and I am so excited to do it. It is the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Now, I know this is probably not on anybody's TBR list. This is probably considered to be a boring book, but this is a necessary resource that has not seen a major update in well over 2 decades. And as a veteran, a person of faith, a business strategist, and a fellow book lover, I know the value of precision, truth, and clarity in every word that we use. Words shape our understanding, our relationships, and our decisions. In a world flooded with information, the right word can make all the difference. Looking up definitions is something that I love to do. I am always reading and coming across words, and I like to look them up. I like to look up where those words came from, whether they are Latin words or Hebrew words or Greek words, kind of the history behind the words. So I am a woman of words. I will look up a word in a heartbeat. So looking up definitions is not just something that you do as a student. It is for anyone who values accuracy and, in my opinion, I would say growth as well. And I like to talk a little bit about the author. But before I do that, I am so anxious. I have been waiting, note takers, to open this book. I wanted to open it with you, and I am going to do that today. And I don't want to cut myself, but I am so excited to open this book. But while I am doing that, I do want to tell you a little bit about Merriam-Webster, and I'm sure you're familiar with Merriam-Webster. I do frequently use the app that I have on my phone, but Merriam-Webster has been around for over 180 years in America, and it is the leading provider of language information. And each month, their website wins awards. Of course, they have apps and social media channels that offer guidance to tens of millions of visitors. And they also have this in print, of course. This is the Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary, and it is one of the and among the best-selling books in American history. And it is a book for students of all ages and abilities. And all Merriam-Webster products and services are backed, according to the CEO, by the largest team of dictionary editors and writers in America. And I have unboxed this dictionary and I am so excited. I know people do not get excited over dictionaries, but I am so excited about this dictionary. Um, Note takers. And this is what it looks like. And for the first time in over 20 years, and only the 12th time ever, note takers, Merriam-Webster has published a new edition of its iconic collegiate dictionary. Now, this dictionary that I just showed you weighs almost 5 pounds. I know. And the website receives over a billion visits per year. And this is according to Greg Barlow, who is the current president of Merriam-Webster. And they sell over 1 million dictionaries a year. And just a little bit about this. It is thoroughly updated and redesigned for students, professionals, and word lovers worldwide. And this, of course, is the 12th edition. It features over 5,000 new words, including these are some words you are going to love: cold brew, farm to table, Riz, dad bod, and those are just to name a few. 1,000 new phrases and idioms, enhance entries for the top lookups, and more than 20,000 additional usage examples. The new collegiate also introduces curated word lists, for example, words from the 1990s and words for things that often go unnamed, expanded usage guidance, and fascinating word histories, which I told you I like to look up some of the history behind the words that I use and some of the words that I see that are unfamiliar to me in the books that I read. Since the previous edition of the Collegiate was published in 2003, and that was the previous edition, and it is 2000, about to be 2026, note takers, much has changed in the world and at Merriam-Webster, with its leading online dictionary, thesaurus, mobile apps, word games, social media presence. Merriam-Webster has become a media company that informs and delights millions of people every day. Over the last 10 years, their revenue has grown by nearly 500%. Mostly from their digital products. Like I told you, I like to use the Merriam-Webster app to look up words when I am out and about, when I am working and doing things. The president of the company says they still love books, and that is one of the reasons why they are so proud of the 12th edition of this dictionary. And the actual physical copy of the book is a big part of their business in many ways. And so I am just so excited to have gotten an updated copy of this dictionary. It appears to be very well put together. The cover of it seems like it's made out of some sort of fabric. And I was just glad, note takers, that I had the opportunity to open one of my favorite and most vital resources with you, this 12th edition. And I can't wait to dig into it and see what they have, some of these 5,000 fascinating new words that they have put in here. Which just leads me to my next point, and that is the importance of informed voices. Our society is facing a challenge. The loudest voices are not always the most informed, and especially today with all that is going on. If you are a person that is keeping up with the news and what is going on, you can clearly see that there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and with all of the layoffs and things that are going on, it is quite challenging to kind of discern between what is real and what's not, what's true and what's not. And they're talking about that a lot as it even pertains to the use of artificial intelligence. And social media has become the main source for many when it relates to news. So it's just important to know that not all sources are trustworthy. It's important now more than ever to seek out facts, check definitions, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that I got the latest copy of the American Dictionary, and to listen to those who speak with knowledge and integrity. Now, I did want to do a different type of review for you today. And it's not a book review, it's actually a magazine review. And take a look at this cover. This is the a recent New York Magazine edition, and it is entitled "The Stupiding of the American Mind." Just take a few moments. I don't even know if stupiding is even a word. But I was just in my local library and I came across this magazine, and I was just intrigued by the cover of it, and really just fascinated to see what they would have to say, because I know that I think that with all of the technology, the smartphones, what the professors are saying, they're talking about how young people are going to college and it seems like they aren't able to read, full paragraphs and articles. They're not really comprehending like they used to. I was just interested to see what this article would have to say. And the stupiding of the American mind just caught me. Um, all my curiosity. And in this magazine, it features two parts. And part one is a theory of dumb. And that is an investigation into our national cognitive decline. And that is authored by a journalist, Lane Brown. And then part two is entitled The Big Fail. And that is what happened to our schools. And that is authored by a journalist, Andrew Rice. And Andrew Rice also included a quiz at the end of his article, and it is called "Are You Smarter Than an Eighth Grader?" from 1899. And if you get a hold of this particular issue and you see some of the questions that they asked in 1899, I'm going to tell you right now, some of us are going to straight up fail. Now, just a little bit about the authors. Lane Brown is a feature writer for New York Magazine. He was previously the magazine's culture editor and one of the original editors of Vulture. He was also a founding editor of Grantland and the co-creator of the podcast Exit Scam. And Andrew Rice is a contributing editor of New York Magazine and has written two books, including most recently The Year That Broke America. He is a native of Columbia, South Carolina. He began his career at newspapers in Philadelphia and Washington before he joined the reporting staff of the weekly New York Observer, where he was working during the year 2000. Between 2002 and 2004, Andrew lived in Uganda as a fellow Institute of Current World Affairs, an American nonprofit foundation. His experience in Africa was the basis of his first book, The Teeth May Smile, but the Heart Does Not Forget, which was named one of the Kirkus Review's best books of 2009, and he later became a writer for the New York Times Magazine as well as a regular contributor to numerous other publications. And so those are just two of the authors that contributed to the stupiding of America. And so these articles are exploring why our collective intelligence seems to be declining. And what really intrigued me was the what I am calling their thesis. And it says our recent cognitive diminishment has been attributed to everything from screen time to microplastics. And it says, what if the cause is more fundamental? Each other. That is crazy to me. So, what they're alleging here is that stupidity is no longer local. Social media is now America's main source for news. And one of the statistics that they put in the article is that 17% of humans worldwide are using the app TikTok as a trusted source of news. And I did some further digging and found that according to the Pew Research Center, that statistic is closer to 20%. So back in my day, we were watching ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, the regular news that you hear about, but it is more commonplace now that people are trusting social media as their primary source for news worldwide. And so, if you know anything about some of these platforms, and no shade on TikTok, but there are no shortage of lawsuits and reports and, other allegations about propaganda and disinformation and interference in elections and just all sort of stuff going on. People coming on there and giving their advice to things and not really having the credentials, the experience, the education. And so, it's just important to vet who we are listening to. And so that goes without saying, and that is on any platform. And as we talk about the dictionary, as we are talking about trusted sources, it's just important to keep that in mind. And so it doesn't matter if it is TikTok, it doesn't matter if it's IG, Facebook, it doesn't matter what the platform is. We're just living in a day and age where we have to do our due diligence. And there is a paragraph in this magazine, in these two parts of these articles. And the part of this article, the paragraph is entitled, "The World is Dumber." And there is a quote in there that just really struck me. And it reads like this. It says, "The stigma that was once attached to ignorance has disappeared. And the loudest and least informed voices now shape the conversation, forcing everyone else to learn to speak their language." Now, meditate on that for a couple of seconds. Back in the day, there used to be a stigma attached to being ignorant. You would not just get on a microphone and start talking about stuff that you had no knowledge about, stuff that you had no experience in. But today, People do not care. They will get on here and profess themselves to be experts in some stuff that they have no knowledge of. But today, that just seems not to be the case. And I just found that quote quite interesting and fascinating, how the loudest and least informed voices are now shaping the conversations that are being had. And the article suggests that our cognitive diminishment isn't just about screen time or microplastics. It is about how we are interacting with each other. So I know that we normally think that it is because we're on social media all the time, or we're streaming all the time, or, it's in the food, it's in the water. We have these conspiracies about what is diminishing our cognitive abilities. But what the authors found in their research is that it may just be that we're putting ourselves in echo chambers of people that don't seem to know anything about what they're talking about. And that is just crazy to me. And there's another thing that I found in this article, and it says stupidity is no longer local. The stigma around ignorance has faded, and uninformed voices are now shaping public conversation. And basically, what the authors are saying by that is that back in the day and not so distant past, if you didn't seem to have that much knowledge or you didn't know anything, it was pretty much just kept in your house or in your neighborhood or in your city or in your state. But now you can just get on here and you are broadcast to the whole entire world. Stupidity is no longer local, stupidity is worldwide. And what I really found fascinating about this article, and especially the second one, is that the author talked about how standardized testing was affecting students' education. And COVID, I know the pandemic, a lot of people wanted to shift blame on how our students were performing on the pandemic and them being out of school and having to take school from home. But what researchers are starting to find is that COVID, the pandemic, wasn't really the issue, but what happened was it stripped bare how little our kids really knew. Just basic things, counting and the alphabet and just being able to, spell their names, just basic things. And them being at home really just shed a light on how little our children were learning. And then also, what was found is that throwing money at the issue will not help a broken system. So the authors looked at different studies, talked to different people, and looked at well-resourced schools, private schools, people who thought they had their kids in the best school system, only to find out that if the system is broken, if there are standardized tests and you are training to the test, but not really teaching people what they need to know, you can throw a gazillion trillion dollars at the issue. It is not going to help if the system is broken. So you can do school vouchers, you can do all of the things. We do have to make sure that we are teaching our little ones, we are teaching ourselves, we are getting in the dictionary and looking up words and finding out what we need to know. And I will tell you, children, even adults, we do not and cannot and will not learn every single thing at school. And one thing that the authors did was they put an example in the article and found that kids cannot do basic things anymore. So there is a sample of a restaurant check. And it has basic things on there like a soda, a burger, just different things that you would get at a restaurant. And what the authors found is that kids were not able to calculate the prices, how much do I have to pay the cashier for this restaurant check? Like, what? What? Because our children are so used to, adults are so used to, we have gotten so used to having our tablets and our cell phones and chat GPT and all of the other smartwatches, all of the things like how much is the tip and, breaking down this and just smart pay and doing all of these things that if someone hands you a check and the system goes down, can you calculate this restaurant check and then what is the percentage of the tip or the tax? And that is something basic that today's kids, they found, cannot do those things anymore. And it is just important to be intentional about learning, about the words we use, and about the sources that we are trusting, to look up information and to challenge assumptions that we are making. We have to be a voice of reason in our community. And as someone that values faith and business ethics, I am encouraging you, I'm encouraging myself to lead with wisdom and informed speech. And this dictionary, it is not just a book. It is a symbol of my commitment, our commitment to truth, to learning, and to meaningful conversation, because we should be using our words to build up, to inform, and to inspire. I mean, when we come across words that seem like they may be out of context in a book, or we're not really sure what they mean. For example, I am currently reading a book by a Russian author, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. I am going to look up those words, or are we just brushing past them? Like, we never grow too old to learn, and there is really no shortcut to learning. We need to continue to learn and to grow, and we cannot, in today's day and age, take everything at face value, because the truth of the matter is that we live in a society that likes, follows, shares, views the revenue aspect of everything, and some people do not have our best interest in mind, and they will tell us things that is misinformation and disinformation. They will intentionally tell us things that are not true, which, last year's word of the year was brain rot. Oxford Word of the Year for 2025 is ragebait. That is an intentional solicitation of our emotions. They're trying to engage us in online content through our emotions, trying to get us frustrated or emotionally connected to content. But we will not be fooled. We will not be deceived. We are going to continue to encourage ourselves, encourage others. We are going to observe the world around us. We are going to be wise, and we are going to do what we always do, and that is to take notes. Until next time, be blessed.
Take notes, scriptures on the table open wide, Bible on the desk where the hustlers confide, battlefield to boardroom, scars I can't hide, books stacked high, knowledge got me fortified, pen sharp as a blade, words cut through the air, wisdom in the ink, ain't no room for despair, lessons in the lines, every page a snare, fighting through the chapters, life ain't never fair. Take notes, jot them down, write it deep, from the soil to the throne.